In recent hours, reported developments concerning Venezuela have once again placed the country at the center of global media attention and international analytical discourse. According to narratives circulating in international news outlets, the United States has carried out direct military action or a targeted security operation against objectives inside Venezuelan territory. This action has been described by the government in Caracas as a violation of national sovereignty and has triggered a wave of reactions, interpretations, and concerns at both regional and global levels. Although precise details and the full scope of the incident have not yet been independently and conclusively verified, and available accounts remain partly contradictory, the very emergence of such a scenario has been sufficient for many analysts to revisit the roots, implications, and overarching objectives of U.S. policy toward Venezuela. The significance of these developments becomes clearer when viewed against the historical backdrop of relations between Washington and Caracas. Over the past 2 decades, this relationship has been consistently marked by tension. Since the rise of governments in Venezuela that have openly criticized and opposed U.S. policies, the country has come to symbolize resistance to American political and economic influence in Latin America. Comprehensive economic sanctions, sustained diplomatic pressure, overt and covert support for political opposition forces, and repeated efforts to alter Venezuela's internal balance of power have all formed part of a long-standing strategic approach aimed at constraining governments that operate outside Washington's preferred international order. Within this context, any military or security action, even when framed as limited or targeted, is widely perceived as a continuation of this interventionist trajectory. From the official perspective of the United States, such actions are typically justified through the language of national security, the fight against transnational criminal networks, the containment of security threats, and the preservation of regional stability. This rhetoric has long been a familiar feature of U.S. foreign policy and has been employed in numerous cases across different regions of the world. Critics, however, argue that these justifications often serve as a veneer for deeper geopolitical objectives, including control over strategic resources, the containment of rival powers, and the projection of strength toward both regional and global audiences. At the international analytical level, recent events in Venezuela are not viewed merely as an isolated or reactive operation. Rather, they are interpreted within the broader framework of global power competition. Venezuela's vast energy reserves, combined with its political alignment and cooperation with powers considered rivals by the United States, elevates its importance beyond that of a state experiencing internal crisis. Any pressure or intervention directed at Venezuela carries implications that extend well beyond Latin America, signaling Washington's continued perception of itself as the dominant actor within its traditional sphere of influence, and its readiness to employ hard power in order to maintain that position. In response, the Venezuelan government and several states aligned with it have emphasized the defense of national sovereignty and have condemned what they describe as unilateral intervention. Even if such positions have limited immediate practical impact, at the discursive level, they reinforce anti-American narratives and deepen political divisions within the region. Historical experience suggests that these divisions can contribute to long-term instability, exacerbate economic and humanitarian crises, and ultimately increase costs for all parties involved. When examined through the lens of the fundamental principles of international relations and international law, the issue of legal transgression, or at the very least legal ambiguity associated with U.S. actions, becomes particularly salient. Within the international legal order, the principles of state sovereignty and the prohibition of the use of force are among the most foundational norms. Codified and strengthened in the aftermath of the Second World War through the Charter of the United Nations, these principles were intended to serve as cornerstones of global stability. The use of military force against a sovereign state is generally considered lawful only under 2 circumstances: self-defense in response to an armed attack, or collective action authorized by the United Nations Security Council. Any use of force outside these parameters inevitably invites serious legal scrutiny and widespread criticism. In the case of Venezuela, a substantial portion of the criticism voiced by governments and international actors has focused precisely on this legal dimension. Critics question whether an immediate and demonstrable threat existed that could justify recourse to force, and if so, why the matter was not pursued through established international institutions and mechanisms. These questions extend beyond politics and touch upon deeper structural concerns regarding the gradual erosion of the rules designed to constrain the behavior of powerful states. Numerous governments, particularly across Latin America and other parts of the world, have expressed concern over what they perceive as persistent U.S. unilateralism. From their perspective, the normalization of such actions risks establishing a dangerous precedent in which military power supplants legal and diplomatic mechanisms. These objections do not necessarily reflect support for the Venezuelan government itself, but rather a broader fear that if such logic is accepted, no state can be assured immunity from similar interventions in the future. From a theoretical standpoint within international relations, U.S. behavior can be interpreted through the lens of power-based realism. This approach holds that powerful states, when they perceive their vital interests to be at stake, are inclined to subordinate norms and rules to strategic necessity. Within this framework, Washington may view itself as justified in acting to preserve its strategic position, even at the cost of straining or undermining the international legal order. Critics of this approach warn that its continuation will ultimately erode U.S. international legitimacy and deepen global mistrust toward American leadership. Behind these developments lie a range of strategic interests for the United States. Venezuela possesses some of the largest proven oil reserves in the world, and any shift in its political or security environment has direct implications for global energy markets. Influencing internal developments in Venezuela can provide Washington with a strategic lever in managing energy dynamics and constraining the influence of rival powers. Furthermore, the presence and engagement of U.S. competitors in Venezuela have transformed the country into a stage for broader geopolitical rivalry, where every military or security move conveys messages that extend far beyond the immediate region. Domestic political considerations within the United States also form an important part of this equation. Demonstrations of decisiveness and strength in foreign policy have long served as tools for shaping domestic public opinion and projecting an image of control and leadership. In this context, assertive action against an adversarial government can, in the short term, be presented as evidence of effective crisis management and strong governance, even if the longer-term costs and risks receive less immediate attention. In conclusion, what is currently unfolding in relation to Venezuela transcends the boundaries of a short-term crisis or a limited military action. It represents a clear manifestation of the enduring tension between the rule of law and the logic of power within the international system. On one side stand principles emphasizing respect for sovereignty and the peaceful resolution of disputes. On the other, the reality of a world in which major powers demonstrate a willingness to bypass these principles in pursuit of perceived national interests. The widespread criticism directed at the United States is not merely a political reaction, but a serious warning about the erosion of norms upon which relative global stability has been built. If this trajectory remains unchecked, it risks producing a more unstable international environment in which legal constraints are increasingly marginalized and the balance of power and the use of force assume a more decisive role, a development that ultimately carries significant costs even for the most powerful actors.